Okay, board, we're going live in 3, 2, 1.
Good morning and welcome to Kirklees Corporate Parenting Board today on Tuesday the 27th of September. Particularly in starting this, I'd like to welcome Louise Hallis, who is our new virtual school head teacher. Very welcome, Louise. And I'll pass over to Jodie for the apologies we received.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Jill Addy, Ian Mottershaw, Elaine McShane, Ophelia Ricks, Janet Tolley, Councillor Smith and Councillor Patterson.
Thank you very much. I also have to say that Councillor Allison has to leave early, but she's nobly come to this meeting before she rushes off to another one. So thank you for that, Councillor Allison. So if I can move us to item 2, please, minutes of the previous meeting. I think there are a number of issues in there. Are there any corrections that anybody's aware of? No? There was an item within the minutes that the board noted the update about the performance highlights, and it was agreed that any board members interested in learning about the virtual school be invited to a separate briefing for this purpose. Can I just highlight that again, because I'm not aware we've moved any further on that. So we would welcome and invite some of us that are interested as such. And we were also challenged within the last meeting what we as a board can do in our capacity as elected members, so I'm speaking to elected members, to identify opportunities for care leavers. And I think it's a conversation we need to start happening at council actually. At the next council, I'm due to do a piece on children's services if I'm not gazumped. I've been gazumped now 3 times on this. This presentation is so old now, it's growing whiskers. I keep updating it. Hopefully, I can put something in there, and I would welcome board members joining in with that to emphasise the point if we do get to that. And it was also resolved that I would meet with Jill Addy, the dedicated nurse, to discuss the pressures on health issues, which I have done. I've also met with other members of LOCAR and so on. I don't know if there are any other issues that anybody wants to raise. No? Are we happy then that these are a correct record? Thank you very much. So we move on then to item 3. Interest. If any member of the board has a pecuniary interest in these agenda items, please fill in the form and let Jodie have that as soon as possible. This is a meeting held in public. We have no members of the public either online that I can see or in attendance. Deputations and petitions.
None received, Chair.
Okay, we have no members of the public, so there is no public question time. And then if we move then to item 7, which should be the role of the corporate parent, which we wanted Mel Meggs, the Strategic Director for Children's Services, to speak about. She is being called away to another urgent meeting, so I'm proposing that we defer that item to a future meeting, because it is that director's view that we want. Yeah, are we okay with that? Fine, thank you. So we move then swiftly on to the Children's Performance Highlight Report, and we're going to be assisted in this by a whole team of people: Rahila Habib, Louise Hallis, Bev McClure, possibly Tom Brailsford as well, or anybody else who feels they can contribute to the information within that. So I'll start off by saying over to you, Rahila.
Thank you, Chair. Just to start off with, if I could just bring everyone's attention to page 16, where there's an error being made in what's been written. It talks about the missings reduced in November when it should be August. And also at the bottom of that page, it talks about a meeting in February 2022. It should be 2023. Okay. So looking at the highlight report, we can see that there's a decreasing trend in the number of rate of children in care from July 2022, 617 to August 607. I think what we need to keep note of in that is the ongoing focus of work on children being returned home, and we had 12 children returned home in that period, as well as 7 children made applications and were successful for special guardianship orders within the families that they were living in. Also, between June and August 2022, we did have 46 children becoming looked after during that period, but we also had 46 children ceasing to be looked after also during the same period for various reasons, including becoming 18, returning home, special guardianship orders, and so there's a various reasons coming through there. We have had from 1st of January 21 to August 22, 75 successful special guardianship orders that have been made as well. We are having a growing, there is an increase of our unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people that are coming in through the National Transfer Scheme and continues to do that, as well as we will have over the next few months growing numbers in spontaneous referrals. As the Kirklees Local Authority, we have accommodated a high number of what are believed to be adults. However, we are getting some referrals coming through them as of back end of last week, so that will be a growing number as well that will come in. I don't know if there's anything else. I don't think there was anything else.
Does anybody want to ask any questions on that? Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, questions and comments. Yeah, thank you for the report and the information that's in there, Rail. I think you've touched on this already, but obviously the number of looked after children continues to go down in Kirklees. We are significantly lower than our statistical neighbours in that respect. So I think it's something to be kept an eye on. I think what reassures me is that actually this is not the same group of children, so children are being brought into care when absolutely necessary, and children are going out of care, I think, for all the other reasons that you've given. So there's a good explanation for why that's happening. But I think we do just need to be, when it's brought up to say, all the things about the special guardianship orders and the other things about children returning to home, that's all taking place. So there's a good explanation for why that's happening, and just that reassurance that no children are being put at risk by not being brought into care where absolutely necessary. So I think it is it is good, but we just need to keep an eye on it. So thank you.
Anyone else with a question or a comment on the general bits on this?
Got a couple more if that's okay.
Well, I've got one. I'll jump in front of you. My prerogative, perhaps. So I'm sort of interested in the number of children, young people that are placed outside 20 miles of Kirklees. It appears to be an increasing number, and I suppose I'm interested to know, for the board to know really, whether this is about enough sufficiency within Kirklees to cover that, or whether these young people are placed outside of area because of very specific reasons or requirements for them.
Tom will come in as well, but it is based on individual needs, as well as there is an issue with sufficiency within the area. We do, however, have a number of young people who have needed to be placed outside the area, and they are on ongoing reviews to ensure that that continues to meet their needs.
Thank you for that. Do you want to add to that, Tom?
Thanks, Chair. Tom Brailsford, Service Director for Resources Improvement and Partnerships. As Raheel has said, the decisions are made on individual need. I think what we're seeing driving that increase in out-of-area placements tends to be the IFAs, so the private fostering areas, and I think our out-of-area residential placements keep reducing. But one of the things that we're working hard on is making sure that we have a very clear recruitment strategy for foster carers, a very clear strategy to keep our children and young people as local as possible, and that involves also working with the fostering agencies locally, and also people who live in Kirklees who are working for the fostering agency. So it's something that we're really mindful of, Councillor Kendrick, and we've got some focused plans to address. I think in terms of the sufficiency issues generally, as you'll be aware, there's a national and regional issue in terms of sufficiency of placements and of homes for our children, and we're trying to work regionally and nationally to kind of influence policy around things that we can do about that, but also there's a number of things that we're doing locally, which again, particularly in terms of our children's homes that may be opening soon, but also in terms of our strategies to better support our foster carers and recruit more foster carers. But it's something we're very mindful of, Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you for that. I notice in the bullet points about what we want to improve, there is a sentence: we aim to recruit more local foster carers to provide more local placement options. And I think I would ask, could this come back as a feature at a future public meeting, please?
Absolutely, Councillor Kendrick. More than happy to bring a detailed piece of work back for the board.
Thank you. Councillor Marchington, you have something else you want to
Yeah, just a few quick. Some of the positives as well. I think there's some really good things that are happening and good changes. Page 15 in our pack about the number of missing children going missing. Looks like that's dropped significantly. I think that's really positive. Pleased to see that. Thank you, Tom, for your update on the out of placement. So obviously the significant number of children who are out of area for fostering placements, all that work about how we're going to make sure that children are, as close to home as possible, and then also thinking that actually some choice expressed in actually not being close to home as well. So I appreciate that. Just a bit, I suppose there's one that just a question about. This is on page 13, and about it's the social worker changes. So we know there's issues around recruitment and retention, so that's potentially having an impact on some of those changes happening. But just do a bit of reassurance about what work's going on within, particularly within child protection, to make sure that children are still kept safe while it's difficult to potentially recruit social workers, which is a national trend, not just a Kirklees trend.
Within the children in care service, there are no children that are not allocated a social worker. Unfortunately, there may be some changes. However, they are avoided where possible. We do have requests from young people themselves that require changes of social worker. However, the oversight and the risk levels are monitored at the same level as they would be even if there has been a change of social worker. So yes, recruitment is having an impact on that. However, we will always try to keep the same social worker if possible. And some of the changes are on request of young people. We do a lot of restorative work to try to repair some of the relationships that may have been damaged in difficult decision making. But if that's not possible, then yes, there will have to be some changes, and we are doing that. However, I do feel like that there's no risks that are not still being monitored in the way that we would expect within the service.
Thanks, Rahila. I think this is just a comment about, as corporate parents, is that actually, it's been really privileged to go and actually look at some of the teams that are working in child protection and see some of the work that's been done to encourage people to come into that area. I think we as corporate parents want to be encouraging people to consider, entering this work with children and young people. It's interesting, it is challenging, it's interesting, it's vital work as well. So just for us to highlight the pressures and encouraging people, the wider community, to actually do as much as they can do to look at this as an area of work.
Thank you, Councillor Marchington. I think that's a very good point. One of the things that's really pleased me within the highlight report is the number of children and young people taking part in their reviews. The regular reviews that happen for any child who's looked after at 100% has to be excellent. Very often children and young people are very reluctant or worried about participating, and to be able to encourage and support 100%, I think is absolutely admirable. So well done for that. Any other issues, comments, colleagues? No? Then I think I will do another compliment as such in terms of education and the personal education plans, the PECs, and that term after term runs at 100%. And, you know, education is so vital, and in making sure things are right for our young people. I can only congratulate the people involved for that. It's excellent as such. Any other? Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. I was on mute. The teams does come through into the real life, doesn't it? Could I talk about the care leavers section at the moment, if that's appropriate? So on page 21, or the other page, depends on which one that's printed, we talk about accommodation, a suitable accommodation. It's the second bullet point down. I think I'd like to ask the question is if there are any other pressures in terms of cost of living on suitable accommodation experienced by especially older care leavers, and how we position ourselves as an authority and as a service to actually gather that data, interrogate that data, and actually see what we can do as a strategy to help our care leavers. Thank you.
Who wants to answer that?
Hello, I'm Bev McClure. I'm the Service Manager for Care Leavers. Throughout any work what personal advisors do with us young people, looking at budgeting, and they have access to a financial policy, which at this current moment in time we are looking at the graphics on that, so every carer and young person and staff member will be aware of exactly what is available. We also have access to a personal advisor's care leavers pot for if young people do run into difficulties. We liaise with providers, we work closely with housing associations, and Housing Solutions, as relationships are really, really positive with them. There's been periods of times if somebody has ended up with rent arrears, we come to, you know, some conclusion discussions with the Housing Solutions to look at easy payment plans. So there is things what we are doing as an ongoing basis in terms of the access to government funds and what have you, as personal advisors are very proactive in making sure that they're aware of what's available in the community, and to be able to signpost and support. And we're also obviously in continued discussions to protect as young people, because like we protect our own children, we need to make sure that our young people in Kirklees have got you know, a right to achieve and be supported.
Yes, Councillor Lawson.
Thanks, and that's really good to hear. That's all really very encouraging. I think the challenge in the next few months will be to keep pace, and that's kind of worth reflecting on. I think is just how we anticipate the changes that are going to happen, and the increased demand and pressures that are going to happen on our young people. And just how we keep pace with those changes. And I think that's a comment rather than a question. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I am aware that in the care leaver service you've been recruiting new personal advisors, you know, and that must have had an impact on delivery. So well done for the relevant outcomes you've achieved. It is a long time since I've been able to go to a personal advisor team meeting, and I would very much welcome an invite at some point, please, if that's possible.
Most certainly have one. We'll make sure that that's arranged.
I was just wondering, my name's Colleen Kenworthy, Chair at Kirklees Foster Network and a foster carer. We support foster carers that do support board and lodgings and staying put carers, and I would really love to come to one of your meetings if possible, so that we could all kind of talk about how we can support our young people, not just from your side, but foster carers that are continuing and support board and lodging, that continue to support people post 18. Would that be okay?
That would be okay, and we'll arrange an invite for you as well, Colleen.
That's great, thank you.
Perhaps it can be arranged that we go at the same time, and so you don't keep on having strange visitors arriving at your meetings. I'm really pleased that number 11 and number 12 have now reopened post-COVID, because and it's a long time since I've been in there, but I certainly will, you know, be dropping in and just saying hello to folks from time to time, if you could warn them. No worries. Any other issues on this performance report? Councillor Lawson.
Just to welcome the glossary of terms. I think it's been the last couple of things, but it's always useful. It's always useful for me, and it's always useful for the public to have those in there. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else with comments or questions?
Yeah, on page 24, we talk about foster carers approvals and total new foster carers approved in a month. We talk about how many placements are with foster carers, but we haven't got an actual figure on there of how many in-house foster carers there are, and connected carers as well. So I just wonder if that could be added to the report, so we've got an accurate record, please.
Who wants to come back on that?
Councillor Kendrick, I will thank you. I think that's a really good idea, Colleen, and we'll make sure that it's included in the next report. We're developing a dashboard which captures all that information, a tabular dashboard, so I think that's a really good idea, and I'll take that back. Thank you.
Could I just make a comment as well in terms of adoption? I'm still concerned about the number of days between a child coming into a care and being placed for adoption. We seem to be a bit of an outlier in the number of days, and not necessarily to answer for now, but if someone could look at that and perhaps come back to the board at some point and talk about what's being done about that, or what can be done about it, or why it happens as such. Okay.
Can I just say regarding that, a lot of foster carers do feel that it is really a long process, and these children should be moved on a lot sooner that are in, you know, for adoption and things like that. So, you know, children missing out on the first birthdays with new adoptees and Christmases and things like that. For foster carers, it's nice to share it, but they'd rather have it with the new mums and dads. So that's something that carers would like to be speeded up as well.
I think that's a very good comment, but so if we could address that later. Any other issues on the performance report? No? Okay. Are we happy then to accept this report? And we'll move on then, please, to the Children's Rights Team annual report. And I think Chrissy Podgorski is here to help us with that. Over to you.
Yep, good morning. I'm Chrissy Podgorski. I took over management of the team. Well, I joined the team in June 2021, and I officially took over managing the team in the October. So I'm going to talk about the three main functions of the team, and these are the children looked after advocacy, child protection advocacy, of which the children looked after advocacy is the statutory requirement. We also run the Children in Care Council and the Care Leavers Forum and the Independent Visitor Scheme. So I won't go through the whole report, as everybody should have a copy, but I'm going to highlight some key points from it. So in section 7.3, you can see that the Children's Rights Team, we supported 133 individual children and young people in this reporting period, and that culminated with 492 separate pieces of advocacy undertaken. And during this reporting period, we have seen an increase in requests to support unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who are required to have an age assessment. So in section 7.4, the chart illustrates some of the most common advocacy issues which children and young people approach us with. And these include support in or with the children looked after reviews, support around issues with family time, and support in other meetings. And the other meetings can include pre-birth assessments, legal proceedings, or support in personal education plan meetings. Okay, so in section 7.11, this shows that we do provide a higher volume of advocacy support to children who are looked after. That was 374 children and young people, as opposed to care leavers, which was 118. The graph also illustrates that whilst the service supports children and young people living within the local authority area, we also support those that live out of the area as well. And they're still able to access our service and receive support from the team. Okay, so section 7.15, this shows that there were 89 advocacy issues raised by children and young people, and these were resolved informally. So we work restoratively with other services and professionals, and this is facilitated by an advocate. And this meant that the issues then not escalated to the complaints team, and in this reporting period there was only 9 formal complaints that were initiated. So we do prioritise the children looked after advocacy, and that's because that is the statutory requirement. But we are currently working with the Child Protection Review Unit in order to look at improving our advocacy offer within the child protection process. So as a service, we do strive to gain feedback and look at better ways in which we can support our young people. So on a quarterly basis, we seek feedback directly from young people. So we've created a form that can be sent to their phones directly, and we find that they do respond better in that way. And some of the direct feedback that we've received is in section 13.2. Okay, so we also have identified key areas of development over the next 12 months. And one of these is to strengthen our links with the strategic groups and boards. And so any suggestions as to how we could do that would be gratefully received and welcome. So we spoke about the Children Care Council and the Care Leavers Forum earlier, and further information about the groups is contained in a separate appendix, Appendix 1. So following the COVID restrictions, the groups now meet in person. They run on alternate Monday evenings, and yeah, things are going really well. We've got membership has increased in both groups. So in Appendix 2, there is more detailed information about our independent visitor scheme. So the previous coordinator had left the service in September 2021, and Melanie Tiernan, who was the previous manager of the Children's Rights team, she has taken over and she's completing a review of the service. And this has resulted in additional support for independent visitors being available, more detailed monitoring of any contact between independent visitors and young people is recorded also. So the independent visitors scheme, it had been impacted by COVID in terms of the number of volunteers, with some of them dropping out due to not being able to meet face-to-face. But following a recruitment drive last summer, the number of independent visitors has increased. At the time of writing the annual report, there were 27 trained volunteers and 21 independent visitors that were matched with a child or young person. But going forward, rolling recruitment exercises will take place in order to increase them further. So as of there's a slight update with that. As of the 1st of August 2022, there were 32 trained independent visitors and 29 children and young people were matched, one volunteer being double matched. And there is a target for, we do need more male volunteers. So the independent visitor scheme is highly valued, and in section 17.6 you can see some direct feedback from children and young people who have accessed the scheme. So the Children's Rights team, we are continuously looking at how we can improve our services to young people, and there is currently a modernisation of the service taking place. And the principles of this review is to ensure that the voice of the child is at the centre of all our work and needs to be heard and captured, to develop appropriate enabling structures for children and young people to have a voice that shapes and improves their lives and the services across Kirklees, and to design accessible and appropriate service and provision across Kirklees. Finally, there has been an independent review of children's social care which has been recently published, and this could have implications for the advocacy services, and we wait to see if these recommendations will be progressed. So thank you for listening, and are there any questions?
Thank you very much for that, Chrissy. Colleen.
Hi, I'm Colleen Kenworthy. I'd just like to say that children's rights are absolutely brilliant. I advocate my children to phone them constantly so that issues can be resolved. I've also worked with independent visitors as well, and it is a really good scheme for the children to go out with someone that's not connected to social services, more like an uncle or auntie figure or a best friend figure. And I think it is really good for the children to have that thing. So I'd like to say thank you to Children's Rights for doing that. Children Care Council, mine have all attended and interviewed probably some of you lot here maybe. But hopefully you got the job. Well, obviously you did, but yeah, it's a good experience for them, and it gives them a chance to voice their opinions where they're actually listened to sometimes in a bigger, wider community. So I think, yeah, thank you very much for your help in that. Thank you.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. The thing that struck my eye in the report was at 7.13, which is page 8 of the report. And there's a sector of the pie chart there, which is compromise. And I got thinking about it, and of course, that element of compromise is a bit of life learning for looked after children, and that idea that if you raise something, you might not get everything that you want, but actually raising it can produce results. And I think that's just so valuable to actually highlight that in this report. And I think I'd like to see a little bit of that exaggerated, if you like, if it teased out a little bit. But I would be interested in just seeing what some of those compromises might have looked like. I understand that there might not be an example readily to hand, but it would be interesting to see how those issues have been resolved through compromise rather than just either no you can't or yes you can type of way. Thanks.
I think that's a really good suggestion, and perhaps something might come to the board with perhaps some examples, obviously, anonymised, but, this issue and this is what occurred sort of thing would be helpful for us to understand, yeah? Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, thank you, Chrissy, for the report and the work you do with children and young people. I think one of the things we like to look at and pick up is about children's voice, and you mentioned that, and it's good to see this being a structural part of the young people's lives, and hearing what Colleen's saying about encouraging young people to get in touch to that happen, but also how this can be built into to make sure that the services that children and young people receive are made better and that being listened to. It's not just an add-on or a tick box exercise, it needs to be a real part of improving the lives of children and young people, and we've seen that happen in other areas of work, and it's good to hear what you're doing as well, so thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I have several comments I'd like to make. We've struggled, COVID didn't help, but we've struggled to get young people's representation at this corporate parenting board. The timing of meetings really conflicts with college studies or work or whatever. So we're really open to any thoughts or suggestions how that voice and representation could be heard at the board. I know there have been talk perhaps about videos or whatever. We'd be happy to welcome that, I think. But even a letter or anything from young people, and that perhaps is something that the Care Leavers Forum, the Young People's Council, might be asked what they think, how they can tell us what we need to know or what we need to address as a corporate parenting board. So I'll put that offer out to you straight away. Your report talks about the total respect training, which I think I've done a couple of times, but many years since. And I wonder how many members of Corporate Parenting Board have done the total respect training. Yeah, I'm sure people have. But I think an offer to certainly the Corporate Parenting Board and probably Children's Scrutiny Panel would have an interest, particularly if they've not done it recently. And it is something I happily put out if I do get to speak at the next council. Within that, feedback to say all councillors actually should take part in that training, so we could overwhelm you with training demands if you're happy to do so. But I think that's really quite important, and it is and obviously connections to this board and Children's Scrutiny Panel as well are key bits that your service needs to follow up, I think. Yeah, as such. I had one or two other queries or suggestions, if I can only find them in the documents. I suppose the bit on page 7 of your report, 37 in our pack, that the bit where you point out the reviews and the amount of reviews that you've supported with, I think also has to go towards contributing to that good performance. 100% of young people attending reviews. Some young people will be unhappy to attend without some trusted support, you know, so I think that's important. I also am very happy, if I get to speak at council, I hope the mayor's listening, to put in a bit about independent, help me, visitors, the visitor scheme, to put that out at council as well, because I think, you know, particularly in recruiting some male members, we may be able to manage that through doing that. One of the things that did slightly disturb me when you gave information about advocacy, and it's on your page 10, page 40 of our pack, 8.3, where it said 36 issues in relation to finance. Common themes within this related to driving lessons, bank accounts, clothing allowances, food parcels and requests for bus passes. I really am concerned if our young people are having to ask for advocacy for food parcels, because either you need the food or you don't, and I really am I'm a bit shocked by that. I'm perhaps innocent and ignorant about the issues, but I wouldn't want to see that as a theme that comes through advocacy or needs to come through advocacy again. Just a comment. I've said about total respect training. In the past, I have been invited to Children in Care Council, Care Leavers Forum. I'm very open to an invitation again, as I'm sure members of the board would be as well. I've done everything from learning how to do graffiti, listening to people's concerns and comments, and it's invaluable in getting a feel of what the issues are for our young people. So please don't hesitate to send those invitations. Any other comments on this report? Yes, Councillor Lawson.
Just briefly, Chair, on the independent visitors report, or part of the report, I noted that we said about the double match. There's one visitor with a double match. I find that very interesting. Hats off to begin with, and I don't know whether that's somebody who's visiting siblings or how that's come about. But it strikes me. The question is, do we have kind of like a champion, or do we make champions of our independent visitors where they can participate and champion the service themselves? I go back to my days on adoption panel, where we had an adoption champion, somebody who'd taken on 4 siblings, and they came to meetings quite regular, and were there to champion the adoption service and the value of it. And I just wonder whether there's anything like that occurring at the moment within that service.
Are you able to shed any light on that, Chrissy?
I can jump in there, sorry. Yes, I'm Anna Gledhill. I'm Service Manager for Quality Assurance and Safeguarding, and I've also got responsibility for the Children's Rights Service. We do have a number of independent visitors who are have been doing it for a number of years, and they present regularly at our peer group meetings for independent visitors, and they've also presented at our team meeting. I can think of one in particular. So if that's something that we need to take forward, I think we've got a number of independent visitors that might be keen and willing to do that, at least to present a bit more about actually their role and what they get out of it and how valuable it is, because I've heard them speak and it's very different to reading a report, hearing it from them directly.
It's one of those areas that if you have enthusiastic people, let them speak. And if you're able to speak at council, then maybe the independent visitor, an independent visitor might be able to come and speak to us.
Do you mean at this meeting or at council? I only have a very short period of time. Really, it's been so long since I've been trying to speak at council. I'm a bit greedy for the space at the moment.
Perhaps the mayor could be persuaded.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see about that. Can I just say, amazingly, and we do have people retire from the council, and I've spoken to quite a few prior to their retirement, and they're nowhere near as old as me. And have no idea about the independent visiting scheme. And I just wonder if there's something, I don't know now whether there's any sort of course that people who are getting ready for retirement go on. There used to be. It ought to feature in that because, you know, there's an audience of people, possibly with time on their hands and energy to give to our young people.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, I have done a couple of presentations on a pre-retirement workshop. So,
lovely.
Yeah.
That's great. Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, I mean, from a council perspective, I know it might feel a bit like a bus person's holiday, but we have, you know, our significant workforce is teachers, retiring teachers, and I've met one or two retired teachers. They were on the prison visitors scheme. Found that was something. I mean, it's not, but just that sort of thing. So, yeah. Extend it, that should be fairly straightforward for us to extend to, but also other retirees, not just within the council. You know, we've got contacts with local businesses, and yeah, just not to limit ourselves to council employees.
I think that's a really good point, and Joanne, you might be able to help us get that information into the world of schools for us for retiring. And I'm just thinking about health. Our colleagues in health, you know, the same issue arises, Joanne.
Hi, I'm Joanne Sanders. I'm Service Director for Learning and Early Support. Absolutely, we have really good relationships with our schools. We do meet them in their constituent groups, but also in other forums, including our Education Learning Partnership Board. So absolutely, and I think we'll get a really positive response. So yeah, absolutely.
So we will have that minuted as some actions that we want to take forward. Yeah? Chrissy, can I thank you for your report? Thank you very much.
Chair, I was just thinking if we're using that for independent visitors, could we also use that as a route to recruit foster carers, even if it's respite and holiday cover carers as well?
I think that's a very good suggestion,
please.
Considering, so again, you know, butting into education, into health and what have you, that people may well want to take that up.
I think it is a really good suggestion. When we were in the pandemic, we were engaging a lot with our schools, and we didn't we secure some capacity from people who did come forward wanting to support, and I think we've been able to sustain that support, so it's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, then we note that report, and there's a lot of interesting ideas come out of it, so that's been really useful, thank you. So if we move then to the joint targeted area inspection, formerly known as J-type report, and I think, Tom, you're going to take us through this. Over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to bring into view for the board, really, quite a positive outcome from the joint targeted area inspection. So that's an inspection of the whole partnership and the arrangements that we have in terms of the multi-agency response in relation to children at risk of criminal or experiencing criminal exploitation. The inspection took place in late June into early July, and I think it's fair to say, you know, as a partnership, we were really pleased with the outcome of the inspection and what was found overall, really. So, you know, the headline findings were at a strategic level. There was really well-embedded practice that supported professionals to work well together to identify and meet needs of our children and young people at risk of exploitation. And actually, those children, when they had their needs identified, had their needs quickly identified and received multi-agency support and good multi-agency support wraparound provision from them. The inspection also found that we had really good oversight of our front door arrangements, which are the multi-agency front door arrangements we have in Kirklees, working together to identify and reduce risk and offer support. Generally, one of the other things that was held as an area of good practice was the Youth Engagement Service. So if you remember, this is a service that was developed through the Youth Development Board in conjunction with the police, voluntary sector partners, substance misuse, health provision, and actually was held up as an example of really good practice in the way that it met children and young people's needs and the way the multi-agency partnership worked together to be able to reduce risk. So I think people were really happy, and I think we should be really positive about that. And the lead inspector, I believe, was going to put forward the Youth Engagement Service as an example of good practice nationally. So I think we should be really proud of our Youth Engagement Service and all those who were involved in that service. Part of the other some of the effective practice that was put in place was looking at how our children's homes are engaged with as well, so that we have drop-ins with, as some of you all know as corporate parenting board members, drop-ins from the substance misuse service, drop-ins from sexual health provision. So that was seen as a real positive moving forward as well. There were one or two things that I have to say are fairly minor points. I think Councillor Kendrick, you were at the feedback session as well with me, weren't you, and Joe, that came out, and I think some of that was about the way the partnership recorded its activity in its internal meetings in terms of exploitation, and also that there's been, we've had a training offer in place which has been, throughout COVID, has been virtual, but moving towards having a more targeted approach about exploitation and how people have got the skills to meet those needs, but doing that, you know, in a more in-person setting, really. The other couple of things that came up were the way that emergency department doctors and GPs were recording some of the information, and about there being potentially some more professional curiosity there in terms of taking account of, you know, the wider risk factors in terms of exploitation. And I know health colleagues have already engaged with GPs and emergency department doctors in some narrative around that. So I think that's really pleasing. So I think overall, I think, you know, as a partnership, we're really happy with the outcome. It demonstrates good multi-agency working, and, you know, we'll be able to address the minor points moving forward. And I think Jo probably wants to come in because she was involved quite heavily in the inspection as well.
Thank you, Tom. Just, I suppose, it's just following on from the previous conversation, but it's really something to be proud of about the way in which sort of workers are capturing children and young people's voice and understanding their cultural needs, and that came through really strongly through this inspection. And I think in terms of voice of young people, we got some of that played back to us in the inspection feedback. And that's really quite important, I think, to us as a group of professionals, knowing that actually we are making difference to young people's lives and their futures. So, you know, I think that's something that we ought to be super proud of, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Thanks.
Absolutely so. Members, comments or questions? Colleen?
Yeah, I just want to say youth engagement services for a young man I had was absolutely brilliant. It helped him turn a corner. Someone he could talk to, and it wasn't a social worker. Made him rethink a lot of things, and he made some good choices after that. So thank you for that service. It's made a massive difference to at least one person that I know of. So that's good. Thank you.
I think one of the standout things from the inspection was the lead inspector's comment about the youth engagement service. She was quite emotional about it, how good it was, you know, so I think we should be very proud of that. Any other comments or questions, colleagues? Councillor Marchington.
One of the things we try and do through scrutiny is corroborate stuff, and obviously there's always a bit of a tension with when outside inspectors come in, they don't always pick up what you want to do, but from what I know one of the visits we did to the youth engagement, some of the stuff one of the sessions we witnessed about children at risk of criminal exploitation, we were quite impressed. I think you'd seen some as well, Elizabeth, hadn't you, about the amount of partnership working, about, you know, looking to the detail of children and young people's, you know, in this area of risk. So it's always nice when, the various partners who come in corroborate that as well, so it doesn't seem to be out of line with, so it is a real positive, so I think that's good.
Thank you for that. I don't think, and I mean Tom and Joanne will correct me if I'm wrong, from my understanding there wasn't anything of any major point that the inspectors found, and what they did find we already had on the improvement plan, transformation plan, you know, so it wasn't, nothing was a surprise. We were pleasantly surprised by their positive comments as well as, you know, highlighting what we already knew. So the board happy to note this report. We'll move on. Thank you very much. So we now would be moving to the virtual school governing body update, but we're not going to because that meeting doesn't happen until this Thursday. So we need to synchronise meetings a little bit here, so we'll try harder as such. And the Children's Ambition Board update, I think, have we got a future meeting coming up, or have you anything to feedback on?
Thanks, Councillor Kendrick. In terms of the Ambition Board, yeah, I mean, in the last two had been cancelled. One was actually because of the inspection. The other one was because of the bank holiday that was put in place. It was scheduled. So the next meeting, I believe, will be next month. So we can feed back to Corporate Parenting Board the outcomes of the Ambition Board. Just to say, members will be aware that the Ambition Board oversees the range of strategies that we've got, so whether that's our SEND transformation improvement, whether it's our Kirklees future, or whether it's our children's social care improvement journey. So it is really important that we bring that feedback and oversight back in at the next possible opportunity, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So we will defer item 12 until the next meeting of the board. So we move to item 13, updates from board members on interactions with services. Have anybody got anything to report or feedback? Councillor Marchington.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, we continue our rounds of visits. We've done a couple of visits to PCAM, the Parent Carers Network. I think there's just one thing came up that I'm going to be following up, which I'll bring back in the future. You know, and that's that link between fostering, adoption and caring, which I think where it comes in under the remit of Corporate Parenting Board. So when I've got some more details, that'll be great. But it is, again, just to pick up on some of the visits we've done, we've got another visit coming up to Child Protection Services at the Dewsbury team. And just, I know we've brought it up earlier on about capacity within staffing. I know that's a national issue, but just, you know, interesting to see how we as a local authority, or those various services are managing that and keeping out and making sure that children remain safe despite the pressures that everybody's under. So.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Councillor Lawson.
Just taking part in the panel, as did you, for the interview for the Director of Children's Safety and child protection, was it? I do know the role.
We know which role it is. I'm not
slept,
sure of the
but
title.
I've slept since then. But I've slept since then. Yeah, very interesting interview and a very good panel. Thoroughly enjoyable, and look forward to meeting with the new director.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, it was surprising how many very good candidates we had who, and the final three were all, you know, incredibly good. So that was an interesting process, you're right. Just to report back, I visited the launch of Home Start's new premises, which they're very proud of, and they are very lovely, actually, and now very central to town, really right in town, which has helped. One of the actions from the previous minutes was for me to meet with Jill Addy about the pressures on the nursing team to do with health for our children looked after. I did meet with her. I also then went to meet with the Chief Executive of Locala, and I've had 2 further meetings with managers from Locala and the council, and I also raised this with the Director of Children's Services, and I think there is some movement to resolve some of those real pressures that mean our children who are looked after aren't getting as quick a service as they might get because the nursing team is just under such pressure. But it is moving on. They still do really good work, but, you know, you can only do, there are only so many hours in a day. I've also met with the chair and the chief officer of Home Start to discuss their strategy and where they're moving forward. And I'm looking forward to attending their AGM in the next few weeks. That's all I have to report. Colleen.
Yeah, I haven't actually attended it because I do lots of other lovely things as well, talking to carers. I just wondered whether any of the board members would like to come to a Kirklees Fostering Network meeting and meet some real-life foster carers face-to-face and just, you know, see what you can get from that information and just, you know, have a chat with them because it's been hard over pandemic and cost of living crisis and things. So it'd be good to see some different faces. It would be great. Thank you.
I'm seeing lots of nodding heads about that invitation, Colleen. Perhaps if you would extend an invitation through Jodie and it can go out to board members, I'm sure wherever possible people would welcome attending. I certainly would. So thank you for that. I think that's about all on the updates. The agenda plan, I think there have been several items that have been highlighted in today's meeting to go on the agenda plan, and we'll pick that up. Are there any other key issues that board members feel we should be addressing in the near future? No, nothing as such. If something occurs to you, please get in touch with me and Jodie and we will add that into the plan. But I think there are quite a lot of things that we've talked about today that will populate the agenda plan. I don't think we're going to be short of things to discuss. I think, therefore, we are now at the conclusion of this meeting, very early, very efficient. So can I just thank everyone for their attendance, everyone who's presented us with reports and answered questions. It's been really interesting, and I'm now, unless anybody's got anything else, going to call this meeting now closed. Thank you very much.